Hi, everyone, and a very pleasant good evening to you once again. A little bit of a different type of show for you tonight, not quite like last week where we were over in Aloha Land. Tonight we're going to devote the show to children, more or less, and teaching them the basic arts of hunting and fishing. Once again, my name is Ted Peck, and a very pleasant welcome to Tides and Trails.
Tides and Trails is presented each week at this time by new Sportsman King Size Filter Cigarette. Now here's Ted Peck.
And before we start the show tonight, I'd like to thank personally Mr. Bob Watts of 1324 15th Northwest of the city of Calgary for giving me this super-duper priest or fish club, which he made for me himself. He says he's fished for over 60 years, and he's noticed that I use a pair of pliers or a monkey wrench sometimes to conk the fish. So from now on, Bob, I'll be using your personal gift, and I thank you very much for it. I wish I had it during the show that you're going to see tonight, because we even used the side of the boat to knock off a few trout. The show takes place very close to the city of Vancouver. The films were taken in the very late fall of last year in the mouth of the Fraser River, which has quite a delta, quite an estuary, and many different mouths here. These little areas marked, as you see here, are marshes and bogs. And we took two youngsters, as a matter of fact, three altogether, two of my own and one of Mr. Bill Gorrell's. You'll see his little daughter in this. And we start them out from scratch, showing them how to bait their hooks, setting up, and also take the guns along in case the occasional duck might fly over. So there's the area basically where we take them, and it's very close, as I say, to the city of Vancouver. Before we start the film tonight, I wonder how many of you take your kiddies out if they're the proper age. There's many sportsmen's clubs that devote a lot of time and an awful lot of energy to starting people out at a very, very early age in the practice of conservation and in the arts of hunting and fishing. But sometimes you can even start before you get them into these organizations. Without any further ado, we'll show you how we did it here last fall. Chap there with the dog is Bill Gorrell from the city of New Westminster and Burnaby. As a fine springer, an excellent hunter. And these two youngsters here you see little Sandra Lee Gorrell and my number 2 son, Richard. He was a very cantankerous little guy, and he didn't like wearing the life jacket. One of the basic things, of course, if you're going to go near water of any type, in boats, always put a life jacket on the youngsters until they can be really expert at swimming, and sometimes remember that if they hit their head on the side of the boat, if they're going over, the life jacket will keep them afloat long enough for you to pick them up out of the water. We were going to go fishing for basically Dolly Varden char, or Dolly Varden trout, if you'd like to call them. The people of Alberta call them bull trout. The Fraser River at this time of year is full of them as they're eating the salmon eggs deposited by the spawning salmon on their way up the river. The dog turned out to be quite a trout retriever. And amongst all the protestations here of Richard, we got his life jacket on, and Bill was putting Sandra Lee's on. I'd like to thank the boys of the Delta Ladner Rod and Gun Club, too, for providing the boat, Mr. Dick Blacksland, and also Jim Kingsley, the president of the Delta Ladner Rod and Gun, for supplying us with bait, fishing tackle, and various other things in the area. Now, come on, Poochie, in you get. Little assistance from Dad Gorrell there. The kind of weather involved here doesn't make too much difference in the fall. We didn't care whether it was going to be a bad day, a good day, because the worse the day, the better for ducks. Of course, the better the day for fishing. So we're going to try to do both at the same time. In this area we were in, you'll see the tide is quite an important factor. It rises a distance of 13 feet sometimes, and when you start out walking, you'll end up by swimming. You come ashore in a little tidal marsh full of tules, bulrushes. Beach the boat, tie it to a stake so that when the tide comes in, we'll still have a boat to go home with. Hoisting young Richard out. He is 6, and Sandra Lee was 6 too. I'd like to thank their respective teachers too, for letting them off one day of school last fall to be able to participate in these films. Oh, he's getting fed up with that life jacket. Wants to run around a little bit. This is sometimes the hardest lesson to teach the youngsters, is the patience end of it. Cutting a forked stick so that we can put the rod on it. The method of fishing is basically very simple. We just use a spinning rod, or any type of rod will do, or in reel, and just throw your line out into the center of the slough or canal, piece of salmon roe on it, and Mr. Bulltrout or Mr. Dolly Varden comes along and chomps away at it, and you just give a heavy reef, and in he comes. Sandra's very interested in the use of my incisors, or bicuspids, as my dentist might call them, cutting the nylon. And Bill here tying on the weights. Use very small hooks. The size range of the fish we are attempting to catch would go anywhere from a quarter of a pound, let's say 10 inches, up to perhaps 5 or 6 pounds. And we use boraxed salmon roe, which stays on your hook a little bit longer than the fresh type. And bury it in the treble hook. We have a very attentive audience. There's all sorts of things that the youngsters can pick up at a very early age. Young Richard here, he's been going out since he was 3. After a while, we get him casting on his own. Same with Sandra Lee. He looks a little bit worried. You'll see the tide starting to come in from now on. We eventually end up right back in the boat. This is the hardest lesson of all, to wait them out. And a few ducks flying over, but we didn't have the gun or the decoys out. Richard wants his glasses back on again to see the ducks. Well, he's got his first fish. Nice little Dolly Varden, about a pound. I guess about 12 inches long. Here you teach them the principle of playing a fish and giving him line when he needs line, and not just to walk backwards up the beach and hoist him in. Eventually he'll be using much lighter and lighter tackle. And in he comes. The Dolly Varden in the sea, which these films were taken within a half a mile of the open Pacific, has a very silvery color. It's an estuary char, goes in and out of the lower reaches of the Fraser River quite freely, and takes on the coloring of most sea fishes, except for the white spots, which are very visible, and the odd red one and orange one as well. Being a char, it's not a black spotted trout. He's a pretty happy little boy just the same. Notice the tide coming in. It's a very good duck marsh. In the old days, this was one of the finest areas for waterfowl anywhere. And it looks like little Sandra Lee there is snagged somebody's old duck decoy instead of a fish. Casting out again. There are many types of coarse fish which keep the children interested at all times. Now we will make sure that the fish is on. You see the rod working there. And he didn't have very high boots on, so we made sure he kept dry by keeping him in the boat. All sorts of what we call bullheads, or actually they're a form of sculpin, taghorn sculpins, abound in the sloughs, and there's suckers and catfish and squawfish. And there's always something interesting to keep them going. But occasionally you get nice cutthroat trout, you get dollies, as you see here, pick up the odd steelhead, and salmon, of course, in season. And anyone can do it. That's another reason we like to show these type of films, because there's no restriction. There's not even a license required in tidal waters down there. Anyone can go and park by a sandbar. Oh, he's getting a little bit uppity about that. Sandra's just as proud of the fish as anyone. But they are slippery. Here's where I wish I had your fish conqueror, your priest, Mr. Watts. And many thanks again for it. I assure you you'll be seeing it in many shows to come. Another trout? No, this isn't. This is one of these bullheads or sculpins. But they're all fish, and to a youngster this age, any fish is just as good as the next one. But here's another little lesson they all have to learn, and that is about the various forms of protection that some of these fish have. Like the bullhead there, he has these little horns that come out beside his gills that they give you a spear. It can give you quite a bad case of fish poisoning. There's old Richard hoisting away again. They have a tendency not to give them any line at all and just bring them right into the boat. The marsh is also quite famous for snipe. On the same day as we were catching these fish and setting out the duck decoys, the outdoor editor of one of the Vancouver newspapers, Mr. Lee Straight, was out there, and he shot a limit of Wilson's snipe. Very firm-fleshed fish late in the year in November. Dollies have a tendency to go soft in the summertime, but at this time of year they were very, very good eating fish. Dr. Peck here hoisting out the... Now here's where we need your priest there, Mr. Watts. That would be a little bit bigger fish, maybe about 1.5 pounds, about the size they were running that day. Watch the fish bite here. You actually take a snap at it. He's in business again. He's in business again. Just to get him right out of the water right away. I guess this sort of thing is going on along the Fraser River a good 10 months of the year. January and February are pretty slow. But most of the time you'll find Dolly Varden there. You'll always find families out, particularly in the early fall when the jack salmon are running. Sometimes grandparents, uncles, and all the kids. It's an easy form of fishing, but it's a good way to get them to learn about the... Whoops, there's another duck, and we still haven't got any decoys out. They get a big kick out of the fish, too. Tide coming in further and further. Time out for a sportsman with Bill. Let the kids on their own for a little while and see if they can hook their own fish. We certainly appreciated the waterproofing on the Sportsman cigarette paper a little later on, because it really doused us very well during the afternoon. Another bullhead. A little happy girl, Sandra Lee. I think they caught something like 37 of those bullheads on that one expedition. And Pop was getting a bit worn out, undoing them with pliers. And one more trout. A very nice catch for the two of them, and they certainly enjoyed their trip. The dog wanting to get in on the act, too. Fish running anywhere between about 11.5 and 15 inches. But on several occasions I've been down to this same general area and picked them up around 5.5 to 8 pounds. This was the particular size that was running that day. Might apologize to some of the more squeamish of the audience watching now, but it's a good method to clean trout. We just show you how to cut up to the pectoral fins and take the entire viscera out with one swish. Too many people cut too far up the underside of the trout. And all out with one motion. And back again. Same general area. This time with another youngster. This is number 1 son, David, age 7. A little different type of life jacket on him. And Uncle Thumbly here going to attempt to call in a few birds for him so that he can have a close look at a wild duck. He's seen many of them before in various parks, but hasn't had a real close look at them out in the wild. We were under quite a bit of a handicap during this particular filming. A very bad wind, good for the ducks, but not too good for the hunters. And building a blind here was very, very difficult with the tide just on the wrong end of the flood was coming in. We get young David helping to blow up the rubber and plastic decoys and pitching them into the weeds and teaching them the various formations to set them in. We use the check or hook formation, leaving a little pocket for the ducks to decoy into. Using all his natural gas here. I guess he inherits that quite naturally. Hoping for a nice flight of mallard or pintail to come in. We are very fortunate in British Columbia to have a long duck season. It runs on the coast from October right through until January. Some areas opening earlier and closing earlier in the interior. Not to be outdone, we're still going to get a few fish as well while enjoying a sportsman. David looking around for the odd bird. Putting on the old Surefire Gorp. Nice flight of birds coming over, but what are we doing? We're fishing instead of hiding. We were handicapped with a rather brightly colored boat at the time, too, which shied a lot of the ducks away, giving David the ABCs of how to hook the fish when they strike. Unlimbering the gas pipe here. You can't teach youngsters everything about a shotgun or any firearm for that matter too young, but when they're old enough to grasp it, well, just take them along with you. Rather than, if they insist on shooting it, I refuse to let them, but I want to get them all familiar with the basic safety practices of hunting and firearms long before they ever join one of our sportsmen's clubs. Here we're giving the old duck squawker the honk. Long highball call. Pulling one around. Come in just so close, but not quite close enough, and shied away from the boat. So we didn't have a shot. But I can't emphasize too much the value of having a recreational area where you can hunt and fish at the same time, so close to the city of Vancouver, or one of our large major centers. A double header on bullheads here. David, he's one of the finest bullhead fishermen on the coast. But he gets just as much kick out of that as any youngster would catching a salmon. If you are taking your young ones out for the first time, try to let them do as much as possible themselves without, of course, endangering anything in the safety department. Very fine pintail there. We closed the show off with a pintail. Have a shot at one and miss him. But we don't get them every time, and we admit so. Again, a pretty happy youngster, though, and he'll come out again many times. But now for something a little bit more serious, on the same vein, or in the same vein, if you would rather have it that way, and that is, let's say that you started by the time they were 3, 4, and 5, and so on. Once they get into the habit of going with you, then eventually they'll find that some of your friends will want to take them out, and you can exchange youngsters. It's just as little Sandra Lee there came out for the very first time, and I imagine before long she'll be going out with her dad on hunting trips time and time again. They're not going to get into too much trouble if they're too interested in learning about our outdoors all across Canada and, of course, all over North America. It's a pretty serious thought, admitted, for Tides and Trails to come out with, but remember that because it's very important. Taking them out and not only showing them as much as you can and that you've been able to pick up about nature. I mean, they're going to get that in a certain degree in school anyway, but the little hints and the little tricks and perhaps some of the skills that's taken you a long time to learn. All right, enough of the seriousness now. I'll tell you something about what's going to happen in the near future. Next week, we're going to go back to Aloha Land, back to Hawaii, and we were very fortunate in being able to go to the island of Molokai to shoot the axis deer. Now, this deer is quite different. It's different than any deer we have in North America. I'll tell you, of course, all about it next week, but just to give you a little teaser on it, it's like a fawn. It's much bigger than a fawn. It goes up to about 200 pounds, but it carries its spots all throughout life. And those spots on the island of Molokai, where there is no snow, blend right in with the surrounding scrub timber and the pineapple plants and all the various other things that way. And they're a very tough animal to shoot. And we were very lucky. Bill Dennett, the cameraman, was extremely lucky to be able to get any footage of these deer. They're one of the fastest animals I've seen. They're something like an antelope, and they go through the brush awfully quickly. So all Hawaii is not palm trees and surf and beaches and beautiful girls and all that sort of thing. There are a lot of areas that are quite famous for hunting. And the first of these hunting shows you're going to see next week. In 3 or 4 more weeks, we're going to take you wild boar hunting as well, the ones with the tusks, and we're going to bring the tusks onto the program here and show you. Thanks a lot for all the names that you've sent in for Jimmy Murray's elk. We haven't decided yet to pick the winner, but we will very, very soon now. And we're going to put his rack alongside of Sadrak the moose's. Sadrak is almost cured now and mounted, and we'll have them on the rear of the studio here. Another type of Hawaiian show you're going to see, I can't help talking about this because we had such a wonderful time, and we're so fortunate to have the Sportsman Cigarette people and CPA send us out there, is going to be trout fishing, believe it or not, trout fishing on the island of Oahu. So I hope you stay with us, and at the same time, next week, join us once again in your living room. And on behalf of Sportsman Cigarettes, when I usually say, be a true sportsman, smoke Sportsman Cigarettes, remember that this program is dedicated to conservation. Let's see that our kids, just as you saw tonight in the film, and yours, and your grandchildren, and great-grandchildren still have the same opportunity to hunt and fish in this great country of ours. Thanks for being with us again. Smoke Sportsman Cigarettes, be a true sportsman. Ted Peck once again saying tight lines, straight shooting.
Tides and Trails was brought to you by new Sportsman King Size Filter Cigarettes. Join Ted Peck next week at the same time. Tides and Trails was produced for Sportsman Cigarettes by CHAN-TV, Vancouver.